He is the founder of TruthSquad.tv. I've worked with him on a number of projects. I've even stayed at his house. He's also the chair of the Libertarian Party in Staten Island. I want everyone to give a big rousing round of applause to my friend Danny Panzella.
I told him when he introduced me, he knows me. I don't need to write an introduction for him to read, and this is what he comes up with. So, I want to talk to you guys today about something that's a little controversial. Some people might get upset with me. So, we're all here because, basically, for most of us, I think Ron Paul brought us into the liberty movement, and he got us exposed to the message of liberty. But my concern is what happens after Ron Paul. We need to work as hard as possible in politics to try and get Ron Paul elected, obviously. I feel like even if Ron Paul got the majority of the popular vote and had all the delegates, the establishment is not going to permit him to become president of the United States. They're going to try and do anything they can with a voter fraud or whatever to keep him from becoming president. So how do we be free without, once the Ron Paul campaign is over, because I'm afraid people are just going to flood out of the liberty movement thinking, well, that's it, we tried to get him elected, it didn't work, so I guess now we just go hunkered down in our bunkers. So, it didn't happen 4 years ago, but he's still running. I mean, he's kind of, now he's told us. All right, look, I love Ron Paul, okay? I'm a Ron Paul supporter, no doubt. I'm just saying we need to be looking. My thing is I don't want to ask the government for permission to be free, right? So electing Ron Paul is kind of like saying we're asking the government to be free, which, listen, the collapse is coming. I want Ron Paul in office to deal with the collapse. Ron Paul's not going to stop the collapse. I mean, he will be the first one to tell you that. It's too late. The financial system, and we don't even want to stop the collapse. I know, it's a downer. So, Bank of America has $75 trillion worth of mortgage-backed derivatives debt that is going to collapse, and the federal government has already told them, yeah, we're going to insure it. Our GDP is something like 14 trillion. I don't know how they, even in their minds, can imagine that they can cover this. So, when that bubble pops, I mean, I see a banking crisis that makes 2008 look like a flat tire. I really feel that that's going to lead to the nationalization of the banking system under the private criminal Federal Reserve cartel. So, whether or not Ron Paul gets elected, we need to be preparing as the liberty community for that collapse and what is inevitable. So, what I want to, just kind of discuss is some of those solutions that we can do to prepare, so that we're not, just putting all our eggs in Ron Paul's basket. First, we need to recognize that there is no political solution. Politics is really just, in my opinion, an embezzlement scam and a way to keep us divided. It creates more tribal lines for us to fight on, left, right, conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican. The reason they use it as a divide and conquer tactic is because community is the real solution to the problems that we face as a country, as a society, as a race. It's loving each other and coming together in understanding and working together that is going to solve those problems. It's not electing a certain person or changing this law or looking to the government for more support or services. So, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we shouldn't be involved in politics. We absolutely need to be in politics. First of all, because we're slowing down the wave of tyranny by being involved in politics. Second of all, because it's a recruitment tool, right? Many of us some of us were involved in politics and then found Ron Paul, and some of us it was the opposite. We found the liberty message and then became involved in politics. I look at it, it's like the political system is the matrix, and we need to have one foot in the matrix, being involved as activists politically, and we need to have one foot out of the matrix, preparing our real lives to be off the grid and self-sufficient and able to withstand the economic collapse when it does come. being a political activist is kind of like infiltration, right? We're infiltrating the statist system, and we're trying to affect positive change within it, and really all that does is kind of slow things down. We can never really, the statist system is broken in and of itself. It's just a corrupt system that never really will never really work. But we need organizations where the liberty movement can be involved, like Liberty Candidates. Gigi has a great book back there written. I actually wrote one of the chapters when I ran for office about running as a Liberty candidate for office. The 10th Amendment Center is also here. They're doing great work. Blake Philippi, who's back there, you should go talk to him. He wrote the nullification bill that Arizona and Virginia just passed, nullifying the NDAA. I mean, there's people in the movement that are doing great work in the political sphere. But what I want to talk to you about is being prepared on the other side. So, what are the things that we can do to make sure that we remain free regardless of what happens? Food. We need to be growing our own food. If it's impractical for you to grow food, I live in New York City, and I grow, I would say maybe 40% of what I consume, which I think is a pretty high number, probably, and especially for being in the city. If you can't do that, there's other ways. You can develop relationships with your local farmers. Buy from local farmers markets. Don't buy from the big box stores. I mean, the junk they're selling in those stores is devoid of nutrition anyway. You need to be buying from local farmers who are organic. They're taking care of their soil, so you know that the nutrients are in the food. Don't participate in this, what I call the statist economy. Don't use the Federal Reserve note as much as possible. Obviously, it's almost impossible in the world we live in to not use the U.S. dollar at all. But try to limit the amount that you use it. Use silver. Barter with your skills. If you're a graphic designer, it's not as weird as you might think to walk into a local business and say, listen, I want to barter for some products that you have or services, and I can do this. I can design you a website, or I can, do some graphic design advertising for you, and to trade. The business owners, I think sometimes we don't ask because we think, oh, they're not good, they just want cash. But you need to develop relationships with local businesses so that you can barter, and we can set up that kind of network, and that builds community when you're developing those relationships, and that is what the solution is. It always comes back to community, and that's why they spend so much time trying to divide us along whatever lines they can, political lines or racial lines or whatever. Energy. Getting off the grid in terms of energy. I'm working on some projects right now. I'm trying to figure out a way that I can get my house totally off the grid with energy, whether you're using solar or Tesla. And I know this video is going to get flagged on, Echelon's going to flag this on YouTube that I use that name. There's all different types of alternative energy. If you're lucky enough to have running water on your property, you can set up, water turbines to develop energy. So these are all different ways that you can get off the grid, and that's one less bill that you have to pay with the Federal Reserve note if you're not, buying energy from the state. Water systems. This is an important one because, there's a lot of fear-mongering about terrorism, right? And so what if the next false flag terror attack in your area is on the water system and now there's no drinkable water? If you have rainwater collection systems and filtration systems that you can be off the grid and not dependent on the state for your water, you don't have to worry about dehydrating. I mean, I think the human body can go a week without water. I mean, that's basically what we can survive. So you can store as much water as you possibly can, but it might be more practical to be able to do both, really. To store water, but to also have a rainwater collection system. I've actually have one of those that I've developed. You can set up different systems to water your garden, and then one for drinking water, one for gray water. There's a lot of great plans on the internet for systems where you can do all three. You can start it out as the potable water, and then filter it through into the gray water system, which runs your septic, and then obviously then it goes out and you can filtered out into the sewer system from there. But it's a great way to be sustainable and to not be on the grid in terms of water. There's a lot of, I think I'm probably running out of time, there's a lot of different ideas that, you know, I've just kind of touched on a few of them. But I think the main point is that living free is not about, you know, fighting. I mean, we're always fighting, right, for freedom. In the liberty movement, we feel like it's always a struggle. And there is a struggle aspect to it. But there's also the aspect of just doing it. Just live free. Don't ask permission to be free, just do it. You have to come to the point in your liberty walk when you realize that free is how God meant us to live, and nothing else is more important. And it's really the only way that we can fulfill our destiny. Because liberty is the truth that has resonated in the hearts of men since the beginning of time. And true freedom is being able to live free without fear of the system. And that's what I think we really need to do, is give up our fear of the system. And you know, I just want to take a minute to say that for me it's an honor to be a part of the Liberty community, because it is like such a family. And a lot of times when I'm at these events, and so many of my friends are doing amazing things, you know, Tony and Gary Franchi and Blake and Gigi, and everybody, even the people that I don't know, people are doing so many amazing things in this. And sometimes I get really choked up and emotional. We're changing the world. I don't know if you guys realize this, because sometimes we're kind of compartmentalizing what we're doing, and we don't realize that it's like the butterfly effect. We're doing these little things. Kelly will go to the airport and take off her clothes to make fun of the TSA and to bring awareness to that issue. But there's probably 1,000 people that walk past her that she never has any conversation with, but that are thinking about, why did that woman just do that? You know, and then they start thinking about the TSA, and that effect just goes into eternity, and you'll never know how many lives you touch just by taking off your clothes. Right? I mean, seriously, we are changing the world here. We're doing it. It's happening. And, you know, the news gets worse every day, and there's all kinds of tyranny. CISPA now has passed the House, and the Senate's probably going to pass it, and I'm sure Obama's going to sign it. But every day we make strides towards liberty, and we just need to keep going forward. And like Anthony said, we just got to do it. And thank you very much for being here. Please donate to send these delegates down to Tampa. Buy a couple of beers, and that money's all going towards that. And buy from the vendors, that money supports it as well. So thanks to everybody for coming out, and live free or die.